We're here to help you get more freedom, money, and fun out of work, because a better life begins with a better career.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome. I'm Kat Breed, and I am streaming live from Phoenix, Arizona today. It is wonderful to be on vacation. I highly recommend it. And I am so excited to be kicking off this year's Women Who Dared series with the one, the only, Alissa Daire Nelson. So before I bring her on, I know that's what you showed up for. Let me tell you just a little bit about the series and who else is coming up. Mark your calendars. Every Thursday in March, we are honoring Women's History Month with women who are making history right now. So today, it's Alissa Daire Nelson. Next Thursday, it is Sandra Guevara all the way from Spain. We've got Hillary Bilbrey on the 17th, coming to us from California, sunny CA. Andrea Koppel is joining us on the 24th. And we've got Friska Wuria joining us from Australia on the 31st. So mark your calendars. Hope you can join the conversation every Thursday morning. We are talking about what it means when you dare to do something scary and sometimes downright terrifying in your life. Because the deal is, on the good days, our mind is our very best friend. And on our worst, it's our worst enemy. And it can sabotage everything that we are dreaming about and wanting to do in our life. The big, the small, all of it. The great news is there are a lot of little things that we can do to intercept the self-sabotage and take that brave next small step. So this morning, Alissa Daire Nelson of Dare to Succeed, that is the name of her company. She is one who lives boldly every single day. We're going to talk about what she has done to overcome fear, self-doubt, and uncertainty on her way to the top. Plus, she will share some steps that she takes individuals and teams through to unapologetically embrace what makes them unique. Stop the spinning in your head and stand out from the crowd at any time. All right. So without further ado, Alissa, good morning and welcome to the Planet Work Show.
Good morning, Kat. It is a joy to be here. Hello, everyone out there in internet land, wherever you're joining us from.
Yes.
What an exciting way to start my day. And I can't wait for this. This is going to be fun.
It is. So you and I met through a mutual friend like 4 years ago and haven't had a chance to meet in person yet because this whole pandemic thing. And yet, so here we are. So I'm just thrilled to have you on the show today. And one of these days we'll have that glass of wine.
Yes, please.
So this is all about daring to live boldly. And you actually said, I dared to live and lead boldly, even when I was terrified.
Yeah.
And that has made all the difference. So before you tell us the story, I have a question for you.
Okay.
Would you rather jump out of a perfectly good airplane or go great white shark diving?
Ooh. I'm gonna go with skydiving. In part because I had a near like drowning experience when I was like 8. And so I've overcome the fear itself. But I'm not like excited about getting in water still.
So that is so funny because I also had an almost near drowning experience in the ocean when I was about 8. And, but I chose great white shark diving and you couldn't pay me enough to jump out of a perfectly good airplane. Isn't that weird? That I overcame my fear of drowning faster than you'll get me to jump out of a plane.
Yeah, in fact, skydiving is one of the metaphors that I use to help people explain my marriage because my husband and I have such different strengths that that I always say, well, you know, he's the guy who taps me on my shoulders. I'm ready to jump out of the plane and say, sweetheart, would you like to put the parachute on? Like, you know, because I'm always ready to go. And he's like checking the list, making sure everything's good. And it is a perfect balance. It helps him to move a little quicker sometimes, and it helps me to slow down and consider all the things. So
well, it is good to have a partner like that in your life for sure. Oh my gosh. All right. So back to you dared
Mhm,
to live and lead boldly, even when it terrified you.
mhm,
What bubbles up for you as one of the defining moments in your life where you just did it
mhm.
and it really changed the trajectory of your life? Tell us
Yeah.
a little bit about that.
Before I ventured into entrepreneurship, I had two different healthcare careers. First, as a registered dietitian, went back to school, became a registered nurse. Now, that made a lot of sense to people around me, right? And then I left nursing to become an entrepreneur. And everybody around me was like, what are you doing? This is the most stable career you could possibly have. Like, you can make a lot of money here, you can impact lives, you love people, so this makes sense. Why would you go into this unstable entrepreneurship thing? And I couldn't not. And I was scared. I did have a safety net. I was married and I had somebody who had a second income. And so when we talk about, you know, jumping out of an airplane, I certainly had a parachute. And that was something that we had decided together that it was safe for us to be able to venture into entrepreneurship. So I just want to say that as a side point, because I think there's a narrative out there that's like, just go follow your dreams, without considering that you may need a safety net. And so I just want to call that part out. But m- there was mostly downtimes, right, in the first several years of the business where, you're questioning yourself kind of all the time. I'm like, am I good enough for this? Um, a- can I actually do it? Like, why me? There's all these other people, and like all of that self doubt. And when you're a sole entrepreneur, as I was when I started, um, and for many many years, it was like you don't have anyone to bounce that off of. You have your spouse, or you join a mastermind, and I did that, and I had a coach the entire time, but nonetheless, you still feel isolated and alone. Like, if it's going to happen, it has to be up to me in order to make it happen. And overwhelm is really easy to get into, but I just kept moving, right? Um, and one of the things that I did to assure that I would stay on my terrified track, because I knew that was on my good days. I knew that's where I needed to be. On my bad days, I questioned it, of course, but I let my nursing license lapse, and I did that so that I wouldn't have a plan B. Will Smith is sort of famous for saying, cut out your plan B, because if you have, put all your focus into plan A. That's a butchered paraphrased quote, but and I grabbed onto that, and I was like, yeah, that's what I need to do. And so just recently I got my nursing license reinstated, and that's a story for probably later on or another day. Um, but that's what's helped me to continue to move forward when I'm terrified, is to cut off plan B, and really just stay the course, no matter how scary it is. And the daily tactics, that's another piece of the conversation. But I wouldn't be here today, and I wouldn't be able to make the impact that I'm currently making, and the impact that my business now can create, if I hadn't had the courage to take that first leap, and then just to keep on getting up every single time I fell, either emotionally or financially or otherwise.
Well, and a couple of things I want to talk about there. First of all, thank you for saying you do need a safety net. And if you are a solopreneur and you don't have a spouse and, second income and all of that, there are ways to do it. But I'm a
That's right.
huge proponent of that too. Can you succeed on your own? Absolutely.
Mhm.
But that doesn't mean now's the right time in your life. And so, the reality check on your finances and your risk tolerance are really important, because if you don't have any financial cushion and your risk tolerance isn't there, you're going to give up on yourself.
Yeah.
And that sucks. So,
Yeah, and you're gonna think you're a loser. Like, I mean
yes.
I mean, I can't tell you how many people that I've come across that are like, "Oh, I just can't, like, you just had so much courage and you did this and that and this and that." And it's like, well, yes, and I had a plan, right? So, again, the narrative is like, I quit my job and was making, seven figures in 18 months. And then everyone else who doesn't do that is like, well, what's wrong with me? And it's like, well, you're on your own path, and
Right.
it's okay as long as you are okay with your own path, right? Anyway, so
Absolutely.
that's a whole
So
soapbox issue in and of itself.
I know. So I do want to talk about the
Mhm.
tactics. So it is, it's a Thursday morning. You just lost a big client. The revenue you were counting on disappeared. Pandemic hits. Like you are emotionally like rocked.
Yeah.
What what exactly do you do to stand yourself back up again and get back out there and put your foot in front of the other? What works for you?
Yeah. So the tool that I use with all of my clients is the Strengthsfinder profile. And I love it because it helps you to understand what your own oxygen is. Um, and and if you're giving yourself the oxygen that your strengths need, to me, that's true self-care. And so that's first and foremost. So for me, for the strengths that I have, I don't do anything. I like if I'm in that really yucky negative space, I do not log on to the computer. And I'll go and take a moment, and sometimes I'll do things like clean the house, which sounds really crazy, but like it's a little way that I can feel successful and visually successful at something. And then I love to connect with people. And so getting on a Zoom call with either a friend or a colleague may not be a client, right? May not be somebody who's paying me, but just somebody who I can breathe energy into them and vice versa. Ironically, that's what helps me to get my energy back up is having that connection, right? Um, when I am in a bad place and I kind of escape away, what I find is that if I stay away from people for too long, it actually like whoosh, spirals me right down. Now, for some people, that's exactly what they need. They just need that quiet space to recenter and all of that. And I do need that. But then I need to hop back in and I need to get connected to people, actual people again. So for me, it's based in what is my strengths, and I bring myself back to that dream. A few years back, I wrote myself a letter from my 100-year-old self to my current self, to my 40-year-old self. So this is 3 years ago, I guess, that I wrote this letter, and I'll go back and I'll read that letter. Like, what is that dream? So futuristic is my number one Strengthsfinder profile, strength. And so to open up that dream again, kind of clears the fog away and helps me to continue to move. Um, so that's what helps. And positivity is my number three. And that's where I like to connect with other people, because positivity, when it's in a deep, dark hole, can't get out of that deep, dark hole all on its own. So there's some strategies that I use that are specific to my strengths. And this is part of what I teach my clients, or really anybody who asks me, like, hey, I've got these strengths. What should I do? I'm like, all right, let me give you a brief overview, right? And I think that's really important. But when you're suffocating, you can't thrive, and you're barely surviving. So what is the oxygen that you personally need? And it's more than your typical self-care. It's more than just a bath, a long bubble bath or a glass of wine or whatever you use to self-care. It's filling the needs of your strengths.
I often tell people, I'm a huge StrengthsFinder fan also, and I often tell people that it saved me at the age of 33. I was in a toxic job and I could not figure out why. On paper, it looked perfect for me, and it
Mm,
was at a company I'd admired for years, but I was so miserable and I just couldn't figure it out why. So if you have not taken a StrengthsFinder assessment, it is a beautiful way to understand what your innate strengths are and how you show up in the
yeah,
world, and to your point, what you need. And
yeah.
I wasn't getting any of what I needed for my top 5 strengths, and in fact I was getting smacked down because I didn't
Mhm.
want it. I took a job where they did not want my positivity, woo, ideation, individualization. It was a bad fit. And so really powerful. And I love that you help people focus on what do they need to fill their gas tank.
Yeah.
looking at their strengths. I need people. So if I've been home alone for 3 or 4 days, I'll go to the grocery store just to talk to strangers.
Yeah, it's funny, right? During the pandemic, people are like, Alyssa, have you been like totally like fried? I'm like, no, I'm just like, I can't get enough Zoom. And you know, when I'm backlit and I've got my lights on, like there's only so many hours I can spend with that. So, you know, fourth Zoom call of the day, my light turns off and my lighting gets poorer. But I just like, I can still connect with people. And that's what I need. You know, I am finding as I get older though, that that circle is tightening, which is really
Me
interesting
too. Yeah. That
because
is
Woo loves
interesting.
like all people and that's
Right.
totally my jam. But now I'm like, if I'm stuck in my house with my 2 daughters and my husband, I'm like, I'm good for a while. You know?
It is funny. Well, and I think that's a great thing to talk about too, is that what we need to overcome our fears when we're 20 is very different than what we need at 30, 40. Part of it is our maturity and our life experience. Part of it is
Yeah.
what's going on in our life. So I'm glad you mentioned that, because if you are someone right now who's thinking, what the heck, I used to do this and it worked and it isn't working anymore.
Mm.
That's because things change for us and what we need and how we need to fill our gas tanks. So I'm glad you brought that up. So voices, a lot of people talk about the voices in your head. We all know, there's a little bit of, I love you, you can do this, but mostly it's, you're going to fail. You're all of these it's our inner protector
Yes.
roaring to life,
Yes.
who senses a threat, real or perceived, and just roars to life to protect us and says really nasty things. So I'm wondering, what are the voices in your head that on those dark days just start whispering to you,
Mhm.
the ones that have shown up throughout your life, and what do you say back to them? How do you handle them?
Yeah. The voices say things like, you're not smart enough to do this. Nobody wants to hear from you. That's a big one. Nobody wants to hear from you. That particular voice is the one that's kept me from sending emails, that's kept me from making phone calls, that's kept me from reaching out. Like, what do you mean nobody wants to hear from you? Right? People hate you. People think that you're this. People think that you're that. You know, it's a lot of those comparison sorts of things. Um, you're not who you think you are. Right? So even like all of those belief things that I've built up and really identified over time, and things that I've confirmed with my strengths and the this and the that and the testimonials and all of those things, like all of a sudden, none of that seems to matter because that's all a lie that you've conjured in your head. It's everything that tells me you're a burden to others and you're not smart enough or good enough for anyone to think what you have is valuable. Um, and when you say them out loud, like you think, geez, it's really freaking mean. Like no one would ever say that to you. No one would ever say that. You would never say that to anyone else. And yet, when we're honest about these voices in our head, um, we believe them, even though they are not only extreme, but just cruel. And they do come from a place of trying to keep you alive, right? That brainstem human's job is to stay alive, and that's what that's part is there for. Like take the safe route. But yeah, it's really incredible, isn't it? The meanness.
Oh, it is. And I remember, it's so easy to coach and lift up other people, but we're not very good at doing it for ourselves. And I remember when my oldest son was probably 6,
Mm.
and he'd make a mistake, and he was like, oh, I'm so stupid. And as his mom, I was just mortified. At such
Mhm.
a young age, he was beating himself up so hard. And I remember trying to lighten it a little bit. And I'd put my hands on my hips, and I would look down on it and said, nobody speaks to my son like that.
Oh, I
And,
love that.
it actually worked for him. He kind of looked at me, and he was like, it just interrupted it for a moment. And I'm going to have to ask him. He's 18. I'm going to have to ask him, does that ever come back to you?
Yeah.
But for me, telling him that, I was like, oh, I should take a drink of my own coffee here. Why do we speak to ourselves so
Yeah.
nasty? And it's self-protection. It's our animal instinct.
Yeah.
But we really need to interrupt it because it's completely outsized, overblowing the situation, and it is crippling. So
Yeah.
was there a time, you mentioned that those voices have held you back. Is there like the one that got away? Was there something in your career that you didn't go after that you wish you had?
I think that I think if I really spent some time on that, I could tell you a dozen or more things. Um, One of the things that has been definitely a detriment to my business is a lack of consistency. No, consistency is my number 34 of 34 strength themes. So, when I saw that, I started to cry. I was like, I'm destined to never be consistent. But you can use your other strengths to become consistent in other ways. Anyways, but that lack of consistency came from some of these things. And I had shared with you a story offline, and I'm just going to go ahead and share it now, because I think that there's probably a woman or two out there who's been through this similar thing. I had used Mirena, which is an IUD birth control, for many, many years, specifically during the first, I don't know, 4 or 5 years of my business. And you don't have your monthly cycle when you are on the Mirena. That's one of the benefits of it, right? But you still have all the hormonal changes that go on inside of your body. And I would collapse, like just sob and bawl and think everybody hated me, and have these feelings of paranoia and really depression, you know frequently. And I was like, oh, it's just because I'm not consistent, like I'm not positive enough, I'm not this, I'm not that. And I had all these thoughts in my head about why I was such a failure as a business person because of that. And I went on a business trip, and usually I'm like the first in the, at the conference, and then the one that shuts the bar down, regardless of whether I'm drinking or not. Like, I'm there till the end. I talk about it as conference mode, right? So I come home from these conferences, my voice is gone because I've been talking for 5 days straight, all of that, right? And I went back to my room after the afternoon session finished and called my husband sobbing. And I was like, I can't even leave my room. He's like, of course, he's states away, going, I wish I could be there to support you and help you. And what can I do? And I was like, I feel like I had a similar experience like at the last conference I went to, which had been 4 weeks earlier. And I was like, yeah, where I just kind of collapsed. Like, I couldn't even be social, which is not like me. And I was like, did I have something similar 4 weeks prior to that? And he's flipping through his text and he's like, no. Oh, yep. And what we realized, there was like this 4-week cycle. And so I'd have these collapses, and then it would take me like 2 weeks to get my courage up and my confidence back to go out there again. And so like, this was one of the big things that was completely collapsing any consistency that I might have been able to have. And so what I realized was I actually had a diagnosis of PMDD, which is essentially major depression right around your period or your cycle. And so men out there, you might be uncomfortable, but like, hey, it's 2022. Let's get comfortable with this talk. But like, this was, it collapsed me, and it collapsed me for years because I just didn't put the dots together. And once I did, I could then externalize it and go, this isn't reflective of me. It's reflective of the hormones going on in my system. And just that awareness was enough to, I mean, and I have still moments of that. Right. But I'm like, oh, yep, I see what's going on. Right. So when we can become aware, right, if we can hear the voices in our head, we can become aware of what's going on in our body.
Right.
That people say it's half the battle. I think it's more than half the battle.
Oh, I think it's 90% of it, because
Yeah.
if we don't know what's causing us to go off the rails, then we self-blame and we beat ourselves up. And like you said, it would knock you down for 2 weeks. But once you had a name for it and you understood it was chemical and, then it's like, oh, no, I'm not a failure.
Yeah.
This is what's going on in my body. And hey, to the guys out there, you are an RN. I bet you can give us a little tip about, do men go through chemical ups and downs as well?
Yeah, they do. They do. It's really interesting. And absolutely. And I couldn't tell you exactly all the male hormonal cycles, but what I do know is that women, or the feminine energy, which, mind, body, soul, it's 2022, folks. We need to recognize that mind, body, soul all work together. Feminine energy and feminine hormones go in a 28-day cycle, typically. Male hormones, male energy goes in a 24-hour cycle. And yet, we cycle on a 24-hour cycle. And so women in business, women in the workplace, we expect ourselves to be on this 24-hour, male energy cycle, etc. And that's not how we function best. Now, and I think that I absolutely know this. There's a balance between all of it. Like, we all have male energy and female energy, etc. But you see a lot of women in corporate sort of shut down their feminine side, and it's not just the emotions, right? which are coined as not a positive thing. In fact, I'm coaching one of my clients through this right now. She's got like 6 relationship building themes in her top 10 of her Strengthsfinder. And so she's always considered herself emotional, and said that she thinks that that's one of the things that makes her unprofessional. And so we've been working on that reframe of no, your emotions and your ability to feel others' emotions is a huge asset and a strength. You're not over emotional. You are, let's leverage your strengths, right? To be a place of true leadership. Anyway, so we shut down this feminine side, and we realize, like, what the heck? And we expect ourselves to be able to run, and push 9 hours a day every single day. And sometimes what we need to do is just like, you know what? Less meetings today, a little bit more me time, a little bit, right?
Save time.
And so when you can become aware of what you really need, now you can start to ask for it too. And we're afraid to ask for what we need.
Yeah.
But the reality is that almost 100% of the time, especially when you're returning that favor and say, hey, what do you need?
Yes.
Right? People are like, oh gosh, like, this is a really great work environment. Now, right? We lean in.
And gosh, I knew the time would fly with you. I wanted to ask about the pandemic, all of that. But anyway, last summer I read a book by the Nagoski sisters about burnout, because basically a lot of high achievers were like, go, go, go. I got this early in the pandemic days. And then they started crashing last summer, myself included. And I was like, what is going on? Well, full tilt, we can only do as human beings for a certain amount of time. But, just boundaries. In this book, one of the big things is that, we kind of do this to ourselves. We paint ourselves into a corner, especially when you're a high achiever. You're like, go, go, go. And you're trying to carry the water for everybody around you. And we don't have good boundaries. And so that's part of what you're talking about, is know thyself. Hello, Plato. You were right. Know thyself. And the better you understand your own body, your own chemistry, what you need, what fills your gas tank, the better boundaries you can set, so that everybody around you is happier. They know what to expect, you what to expect. It's a journey, isn't it? This whole, the theme for this month, women who dared, and how to overcome your fear and self-doubt and uncertainty. There's no silver bullet. There's no switch that flips when you're 43. You got to do the work, and it's a lifelong journey. And it's, some days it's really hard to look inside, but the win on the other side, the benefit is just, it's really amazing.
And the better that you are, the better that everybody around you is going to be. And I think we have to remember that always. We
Yeah.
have to take care of ourselves, put the oxygen mask on ourselves. It comes back to that. It always comes back that you cannot lead if your tank is empty and you're resentful and you have no boundaries. That's not a way to lead. That's a way to burn everybody else out.
Yes.
Yeah, we could go on for a long time.
Absolutely, we could. Well, Alissa, thank you so much. It's been a blast. Have a wonderful rest of the day. And
Thank you.
to all of you that are tuned in, thanks for joining us. We can keep the conversation going. And I will see you next Thursday for Sandra Guevara.
Yeah, she's going to be
joining
great.
us. Yes, I know. Talking about, well, I won't spoil her story, but she had a really terrifying experience in her career and had to make some choices to keep her family safe. And she's going to come on and talk about that. And
I can't wait.
Yeah. So have a great weekend, everybody, and rest of your week.
And you too.
Thanks, Alissa. Bye-bye.
Bye.